Well, all right, child. Let's talk about Foxy. Okay, Foxy came to mind for some reason the other day, and I said, you know what? Nobody really talks about Foxy Brown, so let's get into it.
I would have put out the clap.
Who the fuck told bitch they could do what I do? Bitches got access to. They do shit that I do. Pretty cool. Alright, look at this. Now, the reason why I'm playing that record even to start, Foxy Brown, named after Foxy Brown, Pam Grier, shout out to Pam Grier. The last time I was in Brooklyn about a year ago, a little less than a year ago actually. And what's funny is that I was in Bushwick. I went to an old spot in Bushwick that I go to, and it was basically as soon as I arrived in Brooklyn. Essentially, I got off at Bushwick, and there was a brother in a black Mercedes, black durag, and he was blasting this record. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn." It was nice to get a little love. Foxy Brown, Prospect Heights own. I lived in Prospect Heights, actually, funny enough. I didn't know that Foxy was from Prospect Heights until I lived in Prospect Heights. So that's interesting. And to a certain extent, I do think that, that's kind of a little bit of the problem with Foxy. I'll get into that. I don't want to criticize Foxy too tough, but I do want to give you an idea of Foxy's music, what I kind of think of it, the, strengths and weaknesses of what I've heard, okay? Now, Foxy is somebody that I think doesn't get really talked about a lot. She is definitely somebody that changed the game in some ways. I mean, definitely was recognized rapper back in the '90s, without a doubt. I mean, you still have people who kind of do the Foxy thing. I know Nicki Minaj has a bit of that Foxy nastiness, even vocally. She tries to do Foxy a bit. Um, Lola Brooke, you saw it like recently. It was literally Foxy Brown cover artist. I'm sorry, Lola, but to the point of even doing an old Foxy record with Bryson Tiller. So Foxy's pattern, her footprints are in the game, right? Like you can't really get around talking about rap, especially female rap, without talking about Foxy Brown. So let me get into that. Um, the first time I heard Foxy Brown, I'm trying to remember. You know, the first song by her I might have heard back in the day might have actually been Hotspot. Because, like I was saying, I got into rap in 97, 98, and I think this was the record. Um, I think the guy, remember, I keep talking about this hip hop page that I was able to get access to. It was the one thing that wasn't blocked by the Saudi authorities back in the day. And I think the person who was a hip hop head who had this list of records, they put it up, put this one up. This might actually be the first Foxy Brown record I heard. And I liked the beat and I just liked the vibe of it. And I was like, okay, I'll listen to more. And I think I went back, and that's when I listened to Il Nana, which is Foxy's first album. Now, I'll tell you though, the record that did it for me, the one that made me go, oh, I am paying attention to Foxy Brown, is this song. And I got to bring this up right now. Nah, this shit on the Blue Streak soundtrack, 99 Def Jam. I had this on tape, yo. Anybody want it? Come see me. What? I know this shit like word for word. I flow sick alike, talk quick alike, nana pop, did hot, did you got the gossip, catch me in my crop. And I like the censored version actually. My name Nana like. I'm part of wine, rude guy, go big guy, big things I go on like. I'm undisputed, but they got the bad when you see me. What's my name? Nana. Oh, this is big six, little broad, 5 foot, talk big dicks like. See my click, ride big dip like. So it's all handcuffs like. Bring this, y'all brought to ain't shit. Top track. This was my shit. This I see with this. Come test me and leave with your best Swiss cheese like. Oh. This yes, chick. I started this shit. And I'd be like sexy with class. I love this chorus. I love this entire shit. And I'd be like, home to tell. No, I'm not giving Fox when I come around. This was my shit, man. This is still my favorite Foxy Brown song ever. I don't think she ever topped this, in my honest opinion. In fact, my friend shot me, but this was my favorite part. The third verse. Steve Ron on the book. Going breezy. Who the Ross want to see on this blue stick? See the grand one and wash my hands, soprano style. That show's fire, man. See, picking out my verse. Oh my God, man. This takes me right back to them days in the 1999. This to me is Foxy at her peak, in my honest opinion. This is the best song I ever heard from her to this day. But let's go through album by album, because the truth of the matter is the first Foxy album I heard was definitely her first one. Because I went back, or maybe somebody around me had the CD. So what I would say about Foxy right off the bat that I liked about Foxy was I loved her look. I mean, she was a dark-skinned girl. She was gorgeous to me. I love the dark-skinned ladies, right? Always have, always will. So I obviously loved her skin tone, just her look. And also I thought she could rap. I mean, she had the vocal presence. You could tell when Foxy was on the song. She had a voice. It's in hindsight that I look back and, well, it's I maybe have some criticisms that I notice now that I didn't really notice at the time. But anyways, let's get through it, and you'll kind of see it because I think it does prop up in all of her work. But Foxy to me was the chick. I was much more. I remember when Fox and Kim were beefing. I was much more of a Fox fan at the time because I thought Fox was hotter, and I just liked Fox more. I thought Fox was grittier, and I was definitely much more Team Fox in that regard. But funny enough, in hindsight, I prefer Lil Kim's music and Lil Kim overall. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that, but I mean, I like them both. They're both good artists, and they're right. I mean, Lil Kim's a fantastic rapper, one of the greats. So, but I do think that it's interesting. I kind of changed my opinion on that because I was definitely much more of a Fox fan in the day, but I hadn't heard much Lil Kim, and I think and the Kim that I heard was more of the, I want to say, like the slightly poppy stuff, like Lady Marmalade and shit like that. And I wasn't like, it's only when I start to really dig into Kim where I was like, oh, and Kim kept going. That was the other thing too. Foxy just kind of had an abrupt end, unfortunately. Anyway, we'll get into all of that, right? So let's start with the first album, Il Nana, which is what I believe I got. This is obviously, you got classic songs, Get Me Home, and yeah, like, everyone remembers this. This is like school dance type shit. I think this was like early high school for me that I remember hearing this record. Anyway, really solid song. This is the song that Lola Brooke did over with Bryson Tiller. This beat is classic. It'll always be classic. And Blackstreet killed it. It'll always be classic. Teddy Riley and Trackmaster did a phenomenal job with the beat. Now, this is kind of the entry I think a lot of people got to Fox, aside from, of course, Ain't No Nigga, where she was on the J record. But that, obviously that was, Foxy did well on that and she shined on it and therefore, got her own album out. But what I'm going to say about this is, Foxy to me was one of those people in the 90s that I think doesn't get enough credit for showing that sort of pop R&B rap. Like it was still rap, but it was definitely a little bit more mainstream oriented, but it was still like hip hop, but that mixing of hardcore rap with R&B, I think that was Fox's bag, and it become very, it's a formula that people obviously to this day still use. But you have to understand, I think at that time, and look, I'm gonna jump out the window and say that, like, I was a kid roughly, right? Like I was just entering middle school and a little bit of high school, so I can't go back. I don't know what clubbing was like in 1995 or 1990, but I can say that to a certain extent, it did feel like that newer era when you start to see the Blackstreets, the Drew Hills, and those kind of R&B singers come out. Like Foxy Brown was kind of that bridge, like mixing, rap in hip hop and R&B, especially from a female rap perspective. And so, to a certain extent, I think she doesn't get enough credit for that. There were other songs, and that's kind of her. That was her bag in a sense, and you can really see it on Il Nana, the album overall. There were other songs around that time, like Big Bad Mama, which is again Drew Hill. It was like that sort of rap and R&B thing. So it was a pop rap kind of vibe that I think Foxy Brown found herself in. Trackmasters was the one that, from what I understand, signed her when she was young, and Trackmasters were pop rap. This is why I don't really care for It Was Written in general, because track masters, and I don't want to disrespect them because they did have some phenomenal beats and they did some great rap stuff, but they also, people call them the jack masters for a reason, right? um, so anyway, you'll notice that Foxy Brown's early identity is songs like these, and these songs were big. I mean, they were charting on Billboard and all that stuff. If you look at certain songs like even If I, which is on the same CD, this is very that era. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember like '97 ish. Like I could hear this kind of shit. And I like this beat. It's a good beat. It's not a crazy beat, but it's a good beat. You know, so you compare this to the other stuff that she started to do on this album as well, because she also tried to get a little hardcore, right? Again, it was that sort of Nas AZ type of It Was Written thing, and I think that in a lot of ways was Foxy's whole approach. Like when I hear Foxy rap, I actually hear AZ, maybe AZ more, but a specific AZ flow, or I should say AZ vocal tone to a certain extent, and sort of like that delivery, but the Nas mafioso thing, right? Like, I mean, she was in the firm, right? So obviously that rubbed off on her quite a bit. Now, you'll notice that there was this beat, which was phenomenal. It's a great beat. It's not like the best Havoc beat you've ever heard, but it's a very good beat. Um, I think that she low key wasted this beat. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I don't necessarily think that she didn't really kill it. We remember it because it's a Havoc beat. But I think, and again, you could start to see sort of like the flaws in her style, because lyrically, I don't think Foxy was really saying a whole lot that made you go, yo. It was just more of her presentation, just her look and her voice, and just sort of that dark skinned girl that was like not afraid to get raw. In fact, she was, I would argue, even more explicit than Kim. I just felt that she was like really on some like foul mouth type shit, even more than Kim. And maybe that's why I liked her. If you look at The Chase, which is another song on this album, again, you'll see it's that It Was Written, you know, gangster, It Was Written style, right? Track masters again, right? Like, this is something I can imagine Nas rapping over, you know what I'm saying? And so there was that. It was like she had that side where it was either she was doing pop R&B shit, right? Like It Was Written, or trying to do this just to kind of keep it in the street. You know what I'm saying? There's also this record, Il Nana, with Method Man. Actually, this is the one I remember really playing a lot because, well, it's Method Man. I love Method Man. I was a huge Method Man fan. In fact, Method Man in like 97, 98 was my favorite rapper, period. So anything I saw or heard Method Man on, I listened to. Mm, mm. So this was cool. And then let's see here. What else was on this album? Oh, of course, the big mainstream record. This was I'll Be with Jay. This was huge. I did hear this as well. And yeah, again, I think the beat still holds up. I actually think it's a decent song. I don't really remember what Fox says on it. But again, I just remember that she was there in the video. She looked good. They were dancing. I mean, this is 90s nostalgia. This is the stuff that made people want to check out rap, honestly, because it was pop, but it was still hip hop enough for people to be like, that's not whack. Totally, it's not totally whack. You know what I'm saying? I can still enjoy it and get into it, and it's a friendlier, you need stuff that casuals can get into that isn't terrible, right? That you enjoy, that a casual can also kind of like be like, oh, okay, I kind of like this. Anyway, Il Nana, I thought this album was pretty decent at the time. It wasn't an amazing album. I didn't listen to it more than once. I don't remember really checking for it much. It was kind of like a one or two time listen for me, and then I moved on. Now, the next album after this was, let's see here. Oh, it was Chyna Doll. Chyna Doll. I'm sorry, Fox. I don't want to be destructive, but this was a weak ass album. I remember trying to listen to this a little bit after the fact, so maybe this was the early 2000s because it didn't even come around me, unfortunately. But this album was not good. And I think this is where you started to kind of see Foxy have like those production issues, and she was in a way getting stuck in a rut with that Trackmaster shit. Because a lot of these albums, or I should say, a lot of these songs on this album had that Trackmaster's vibe, and then Trackmaster impersonator types, and it was weak. So um, you could be surprised, man. There were songs on here with Jay, with Nas, with X, with Nori, Too Short. I mean, these are some of the greatest rappers ever. Yet you don't really know what songs she had with them, and I think that's a sign that the beats were mediocre. Honestly, the songs themselves didn't stand out, and that's why I always stress you got to have production. Production, production, production is the first thing that I always pay attention to, because your production will dictate how relevant you are down the line, whether immediately, if not, certainly down the line. Because there's songs on here, like she had a song with DMX, Dog and a Fox, and that was meh as fuck. I mean, Swizz did that beat, but it just wasn't that great. Um, you know, let's look at this I Can't beat, for example, right? I like this beat actually. It's a pretty decent beat. It's not great. It's not phenomenal, but it's a good laid back, nostalgic type of beat. The kind of beat that you would hear back then in a way. Very much a product of its time. It's got that wham sample, so it makes you feel good. Again, it's that track masters type thing, right? You sample something familiar for the audience, but you put it in hip hop form, and then the audience is like, "Oh, I kind of like this. I can dance to this. It's not that threatening, right?" And I feel like this is the kind of rut that Foxy was finding herself stuck in. It's not bad. For nostalgia vibes, it's cool. It's similar to I'll Be. Maybe they were trying to chase the success of I'll Be, but the song as a whole just isn't great. And there's a lot of weak ass like beats on this shit, man. I remember this album had Bonnie and Clyde Part 2. That's a J record with Foxy and Jay. That beat is garbo, respectfully. Tramp was another one I remember that was just like not good at all. Um, but there was also what was on here? Hotspot was on here, like I said, which I did kind of like. That was okay. The hardest record that was on Chyna Doll by far is the one that we all know, right? This one, 456, with Memphis, Bleek, and Beanie. And it was one of the first times you heard Beanie. Again, this is not for radio, so dope beat. And Beanie actually did pretty well on this. All right. So that's Chyna Doll. I don't really recommend wasting much time with Chyna Doll. I would say, like, if you want to get into Foxy, you could start with Il Nana, because that's her first album, and then I would jump, honestly, straight to the album I'm about to talk about now, which I believe is her best album, and that is Broken Silence. Yeah, man. I remember when this came out. I bought the CD, and this was the one Foxy Brown album I owned, and I was happy to own this album because I did listen to this album quite a bit, and I still think it's Foxy's best work overall. This shit was an instant classic. Now, I'll tell you, I remember when this came out, it was a gamble, because the truth of the matter is, I remember hearing it and being like, no one's really doing reggae rap records, really, especially at this time. And at first, it was like kind of a weird thing, but I was like, oh, but this shit is just hard. It was an instant kind of classic. And I remember she had this line. She spit some of the best shit she's ever spit. What's the line she said? It's like I'm in my own fucking world. I speak how I feel. Sometimes I feel like I'm just too fucking real. And I was like, oh man, I hear you, my dear. That's a quotable, and I respect that. I get where you're coming from. I love to stack riches, no disrespect, y'all. I respect the rap game, but I don't fucking rap bitches. I was hard. This worked, and I'm not even into reggae raps like that. In fact, I do think to a certain extent she went a bit overboard on the CD with the reggae fusion stuff. But oh yeah, it's definitely the best version of that. Ideally, should have only had this song, and then the rest would have been some more straight rap type of stuff, to really give her that credibility, because I think she needed it after dropping Chyna Doll, which was a bit of a wheat plate. But anyway, after this was on the CD was BK Anthem, which I didn't really care for at the time. Um, it had the The video was kind of cool to a certain extent. It was her and BK. Like I said, I didn't even know she was from Prospect Heights until I like lived in Prospect Heights. And so when I see the video, it says St. Mark's. I mean, I know I don't know exactly what intersection that is, but I obviously know St. Mark's. Um, but again, Foxy, it's funny because Fox was hood, but in a way, and she always stressed that hood element, but you couldn't really, she never really talked about Prospect Heights. Maybe because Prospect Heights isn't really known for that. And, you know, it's interesting how people choose what they want to talk about based on where they're from. Because the truth is, Prospect Heights, now, I am not a Prospect Heights, historian, and I was only there for a couple of years, but it was a pretty nicer time part of Brooklyn, at least what I saw. Now, of course, it's right next to Crown Heights, and Crown Heights, you can see the difference. The moment you cross Franklin Ave, it's like, oh, I'm in a different, not in a different Brooklyn, but almost in a different vibe. You know what I mean? Um, Now, the next song on here that I thought was really, really dope was The Letter with Ron Isley. I can't find an instrumental for that, but I really recommend you listen to that. That song floored me at the time. And I still think it's one of the best like songs that Foxy ever did. And it was just, again, she spit from the heart, you know? It's not like the lines were crazy, but that was the thing with Foxy. She just had a certain um, she was genuine. You could feel, at least when she was making the records, if she was in a place of pain, she would spit it, almost on some Tupac shit. And I do think that that's obviously an influence for her because on the CD she also rhymes on like a Pac like beat or something, and even I think appropriates like a Pac line. So you could tell like there was a bit of that in her style. Now, the Letter was done by Ski. And shout out to Ski Beats, man. Ski of a famous Dead Presidents, you know, fame. But that song, The Letter, is one of Foxy's best songs, hands down. And this is what I'm talking about, why Broken Sounds was such an improvement, especially over China Doll, but really overall at her best work because she was stepping out to do something, she was starting to work with a little bit more hip hop stuff and also, really branching out to do her own thing. And so I like that. And I think that that was a positive thing for her. I wish she had done more of that. But, anyways, the next song on here, oh, I taste just like candy. This song was but very Neptunes. This is 2001 Neptunes, Khalees, hands down. In fact, honestly, I kind of wish Khalees just kept this beat for herself because I think she would have killed it. It sounds very Khaleesy to me, which is probably why she's on the chorus. But again, good beat, not a phenomenal beat, but just a good enough beat. Um, Tables Will Turn was on here. Again, that was the other sort of like reggae record that she was putting out there. I didn't really care for it. Um, but again, it's not a bad song at all. It's cool. Like if it comes on, I'll dance to it, but it's not a song I'll ever really listen to on my own. But Baby Sham did kill it, where he's like, "Make 'em cry, back to Jamaica," and all that shit. Like he did well on it. Hood Scriptures. You know, this takes me right back to Saudi, man. I was in high school and I remember being like, oh, like what an interesting surprise. This sounds like Egyptian Lebanese music because that's what you would hear in Saudi. Like the Saudi kids would drive around listening to Egyptian or Lebanese music because those are sort of the two Arab countries that seem to have the most artistic influence in the Arab world. I could be wrong, but that's the vibe that I got. So, and what was interesting to me is that when this came out, I was like, oh, maybe the producer heard Big Pimpin' because Big Pimpin' was like the first time I had heard anything sort of Arabic in rap at that time. And so, anyways, I thought it was a decent flip. Not too crazy, but certainly all right. Um, let's see here. What else was on here? Run Your Shit. Run Your Shit. His shit was so dumb. This is a Capone Nori record. This could have been dope. I just wish the beat was better because it's a weird ass beat. Almost on some super Brooklyn shit, but not as hard. So yeah, this could have really been some heat, but you know. And shit, bitches, yes. But I should tell you, listen to the shit because it is funny. And then, of course, we get to the broken silence version of Nana Be Like, which again was on the album. I was surprised to see it there, but I wasn't surprised because, like I was telling you, Nana Be Like was fire. Like I'm pretty sure anyone that heard that shit was like, whoa, and it wasn't on like Foxy Brown CD, and now it found its way into the CD. Now, the Broken Silence version, I don't care for. I didn't like the chorus. I didn't like that yaga yaga yo. I didn't like that Jamaican shit that she put in there, honestly. And she didn't spit it with the same energy. It just wasn't, that to me, again, it was like a little too much of that West Indian flavor thing that she was trying to throw in there, and I wasn't feeling it. After this, Gangsta Boogie. Yeah. This was hard. Neptune's beat. Home of the Livest. Shout out to Brooklyn. I like this record quite a bit. And she actually spit some of her hardest bars on this. It has like a Snoop vibe to it. Like I could almost hear Snoop or Song West Coast on it. I remember she had this line where she was like, let me see, what did she say? Oh yeah, she's like, hmm, still repping the K, gun in the waist, hit by the Neptunes, throwing the bass. Y'all niggas got a problem this year. I'm focused, man. Like, there was a way that she did that shit, and I was like, yeah, this is hard. This is like one of my favorite Fox records. Period. I'll put that up there. And then you've got So Hot, Fox, So Hot. This was cool too. Y'all can't fuck with me. So overall, I'd say that Broken Sounds was her best work. After that, it gets a little bit, unfortunately, not so great. Um, I did check out her other stuff, and it wasn't very good. Those two albums afterwards, like I think she had Del Nana 2. This song with Pharrell called Magnetic, it's an okay beat. It feels very, it is of that time, but again, it's a good beat. It's not bad. Um, it's not bad. But again, this is a B tier Neptune's beat to me. Like Um, so overall, man, my issues with Foxy is, I mean, the positives, like we've said, is that she did have a, a look and she did have a voice and she could rap, right? It's just that I feel like her production hurt her, and a lot of times they were often generic and just not good. Or more importantly, her lyricism wasn't really quite there to keep her up there. Because even though she had the sincerity and the rawness, which was excellent and was working for her, you know, she didn't really have the rhymes to back it up. Where you're like, damn, she had that quotable, you know. And I think this is why people talk about Broken Silence mostly because that's when she was really kind of at her rawest and you know playing to her strengths the most. I do think she went too hard on that West Indian shit. Maybe because she was Trini and dating like a West Indian dude, Jamaican. But it's funny because she's dating Sprague Benz, and in hindsight, we always talk, or we hear Jamaican guys don't eat pussy and all that shit. And Fox was rhymed about eat the click constantly, so someone's capping, and this in that relationship, someone was capping. I didn't get it. But lastly, just cover a few things. Her features, obviously, I Shot Ya, which was again, we remember Keith Murray, we remember Prodigy. I think they had the best ones. Joe was okay. Um, and then, of course, we've got the infamous Foxy verse where she went straight at Lil Kim and essentially, started beef. Or, well, they already had beef, but then when the crews met up, it led to actual violence. I believe at Hot 97, and yeah. So, and this verse it's like not the greatest verse either. Even she's just talking shit, and it's like literally like yo, it's on type of thing, which is probably not the smartest thing you want to do on record. So, but certainly a classic moment of sorts. And then you have the infamous, of course, or very famous, I should say, Touch Me, Tease Me, classic. Again, I like Foxy's vocal tone on it. I don't quite remember what she says on it, but the beat, the PSK flip is fantastic, and Case kills it. You know. Yeah, man, and I think that kind of ends it. If there's any Foxy songs you think I forgot, I would love for y'all to mention them in the comment section. What do you think about Foxy? Do you still listen to Foxy? Do you think her stuff holds up? Let me know. Come on, fucking two step on.